I spent most of my days going to the Blue Note Vault and listening to unreleased tapes and organizing the vault. And that's how I discovered 25 minutes of unissued Thelonious Monk. Once it's released, the music exists. It is there for people to hear. If something is sitting in a tape vault, it really doesn't exist because no one can hear it. So it exists physically, but it does not exist in terms of people sharing and hearing the music. So it seemed very important to me to get a lot of this material out. And it was also important because a lot of the musicians were no longer alive. And so it seemed even more urgent for me to expand the legacy of those artists by making available music of theirs that never came out originally. It's what means something to me. I do it, the work I do because it's very important to me that this music get preserved, get discovered, and that it keeps going. Whether it's young artists now or the great giants of the 40s and 50s. To me, the music is the final thing that's important. So the era of Blue Note Records that was headed by Bruce Lundvall, and I worked very closely with him, we were always looking for new talent. It would range from people like Joe Lovano, who then became an established talent, Jackie Tarrison, a lot of young voices that were totally original. And that actually was the criteria. It wasn't how well they'd sell. It was, is this a real artist? Is this a unique person? And that's what we tried to base our signings and recordings on. Well, a woman in the royalty department at EMI, EMI was the owner of Blue Note at the time, sent Bruce Lundvall a tape of young girls singing "Spring Can Really Hang You Up the Most," which is a great song, not that well known, and a very difficult song to sing. And Bruce was knocked out by it, and he played it for Tom Everett and myself and Brian Bacchus, who were on the staff at Blue Note at the time, and we all just never heard anybody like this before. And she was just accompanying herself on piano, and she very musical in her vocal style and in her piano playing and accompanying herself. And it turned out that she had been a piano major at North Texas State. So she was deeply well versed in music, and jazz was her first love. But so we signed her. Brian Bacchus and I went to see her at, she was playing Wednesday nights during the happy hour, which was like 4 to 7 p.m. at an Italian restaurant down around Canal Street. And she was just playing with an acoustic bass player and a drummer and just playing standards. But she just rearranged all these standards and sung the shit out of them. And her playing, it was all so musical, and nobody sounded like her. But we just loved it, And so that's what we thought we would be making, an album of her singing standards in her own way with, a trio. But she started submitting tapes, demos of things, and frankly, the demos were all over the place. There were some things that bordered on country music, other things that were, you know, honky tonk, and other things that were rock and roll and folk. And, you know, she had a style that encompassed all of these different elements. So we realized that the album that she would make would be more eclectic than just a jazz album. And Bruce said to her, you know, do you want to be on Blue Note, or we can put you on one of our pop labels like Manhattan or Metro Blue? And she says, no, I want to be on Blue Note. I grew up loving Blue Note. And so she made the record that she wanted to make after a few false starts. But finally she made the record she wanted to make, and it was mostly original material. But it was still very acoustic and still very, very much her. No one sounded like her. No one played piano like her, really. And it was just something unique. Well, we thought, well, this turned out great. She's going to really be something. And if we could sell 250,000 copies of this, we'd be in great shape. Well, you know, 5 million copies later, in the first 2 years, I think it sold 5 million copies, and it's now over 10 million copies. It just was the right record of the right artist at the right time in the music scene. It just captured the imagination of a lot of adults, younger fans, musicians, jazz fans, pop fans. It just hit everywhere, and it became an incredibly popular thing, overwhelming to her. I mean, she wasn't having a great time initially. She wasn't interested in fame or, you know, being approached. So it was kind of a rough period for Nora, but she got through it and has had like a great career ever since. But I think the thing that taught us was that Blue Note could be not just pure jazz or, you know, commercial soft jazz. What do you call it? But it could encompass other kinds of adult music, and that's the path that Nora set us on. Bruce was always worried about, well, you know, would people think this is selling out? This is not jazz. And I always felt that anything that's quality and it's adult music, we should be embracing. And like the next year after Nora, I got wind that Al Green was going back in the studio with Willie Mitchell, who produced all his great records in the 70s. So I flew down to Memphis, and I got them, and I got them to sign with us, and we put those records out. And I thought, for me, Al Green, a great artist, a unique artist, yeah, he should be on Blue Note. He makes great music, and, you know, it's not for 11-year-olds or TikTok people. It's, you know, quality music for quality listeners. And that became the opening up of Blue Note to be something more than just jazz, but to maintain the quality of the label.